My Life Between Lives story from Newton Train Institute practitioners.
I see a whole change in the thrust of searching for answers about who we are and why we're here. And I think it's wonderful, and I just hope the movement continues to expand.
Let us expand the universal consciousness together with a My Life Between Lives story presented by the Michael Newton Institute.
Welcome to My LBL Story. My name is Ekamananda. Today we have special guest, Eric Christopher. Eric is a certified hypnotherapist. He holds a master's degree in marriage and family therapy. For over 24 years, he has been specializing in past life regression, life between life therapy, and present life deep emotional and subconscious healing. Eric's passion lies in guiding clients into the expanded states of consciousness to access their higher self and inner wisdom, helping them uncover and transform the root causes of limiting beliefs and fears. His work supports spiritual awakening, healing, and profound insight through the transformative power of spiritual hypnosis, often facilitating profound healing breakthroughs that seemed miraculous, leaving medical professionals in awe. His own path began in India at the age of 24, leading a journey that awakened a deep calling and ultimately led him to the transformative field of spiritual hypnotherapy. Today, from his private practice in Saint Paul, Minnesota, Eric continues to guide individuals into life-changing insight, clarity, and healing, supporting a return to wholeness, purpose, and inner peace. A big, warm welcome to Eric.
Well, thank you so much for having me on your show.
Thank you for coming to the show.
It feels like we're kindred souls here. Well, I think everyone in the Life Between Life family is kindred souls. I want to thank you so much for having these interviews and for having your YouTube channel. It's just getting out in the mass consciousness stream with people like you doing this kind of work, putting it out there more and more. And so I thank you. And it's such an honor. I mean, you exude just love and light, and it's such an honor to be here with you. And I thank you for the work that you're doing.
It is our absolute pleasure to have you with us today. Thanks for coming. And we just different body doing the same thing, and we all emanate from the same source energy.
Yes, that's right. We all are different, unique expressions of the one consciousness. Yes.
Perhaps my first question is, how did you begin your spiritual path?
I would say it was when I was born, because my father was a minister. So and my soul chose my parents to come to. But that's really not where my spiritual path began. Because growing up in the Christian church, it was a very different view of spirituality. It was, I think in Western spirituality, it's common to think that you have a soul and the soul perhaps goes somewhere after you die, but I find it's much more accurate to say that we are these eternal soul beings having a human experience. And the idea of reincarnation growing up was not even on the radar for me. We didn't talk about that. We didn't even think about it. Although a premonition was, I remember one of our neighbors, Mr. Bardwaj, was from India. And I grew up in a small town. And I remember he and my dad having a discussion on my driveway about reincarnation, and Mr. Bardwaj insisting that there was reincarnation, and my dad saying, well, I guess we'll find out. now I have no doubt in my mind. I know that these days there's enough evidence of reincarnation that even a logical minded skeptic can believe in reincarnation just on the sheer evidence of it. And what I find that's so important is evidence of reincarnation is evidence that we are these eternal, magnificent soul beings that are outside of time and space, and we're using these bodies. And how my journey began, I would say my spiritual journey began when I could not find a teaching job after I graduated from college. So I went overseas to Taiwan to teach English. And it didn't really start there. It started soon after I left Taiwan teaching English. I decided to backpack around India for 6 months. When I did that, I went to at the time it was called Calcutta. Now it's Kolkata. But I decided to work for the Mother Teresa Home for the Destitute and Dying. And my first day there, I said, well, what should I do? And the man in charge said, well, go sit with this man over here. He's dying. And there was about 50 cots there, and maybe 30 of them were filled with people that were laying there. So I sat down next to a man who was dying, and I sat next to him, and he started talking to me. And I tried to tell him, I don't know what you're telling me, because he was talking in Bengali, a local dialect. And it didn't matter to him. He kept talking to me anyway, and he held out his arms. And I grabbed his arms, and he died right in my arms. Then he became this cold, hard thing. All the light, the energy, the consciousness just left his body. His body began to get very much more stiff. We took his body and we threw it on a burning pyre. And all I kept thinking was, whatever I was just talking to was not this body that is burning here. I was talking to his consciousness, his light, his energy and consciousness. And wherever that is, that's who and what he was. Then that's who and what we are. And then I had this strange, interesting experience. Not too long after that, it lasted for about 24 hours. While I was traveling around India, I had this sensation that my eyes were windows, and I was just peering out the windows of my eyes. Nothing could ever harm me. Even if my body died, nothing could ever harm me. I was, who and what I was safe and secure, watching through the windows of my eyes. I see, in retrospect, I was having an experience of connecting very deeply with my eternal soul self, more tuned into that part. But something kept turning in my mind. We are these spiritual beings. We are these spiritual beings having a human experience. And a few years after that, I'd say it was 7 years after that, I came across Michael Newton's book, Journey of Souls. And that changed everything for me. It was in 1997 when I picked up that book and started reading it. It's interesting how that came about, because I remember I was working part-time on a psychiatric unit. And I knew one of the nurses next door on the adjoining unit, on the next door unit. I knew he was very spiritual. I really became enamored with spirituality and learning all I could about it. I remember his name was Dale, and I remember when he's walking by the desk, I found myself blurting out. I never even had planned this at all. And I think it was almost as though my spirit guides were talking through me or prompting me to speak. And I found myself blurting out, Dale, what book should I read? And I don't even think he stopped to think about it. He just said Journey of Souls by Michael Newton, and almost as though he was channeling something. And so I quickly wrote that book down, and I got the book and I read it, and it changed my life. That was the book that really launched me into the spiritual path. When I was reading that, something in me said, I got to get training with this guy before he retires. And fortunately, I was able to do that, and finally in 2004. But it was just when I was starting to get into a marriage and family therapy program, University of Wisconsin Stout in Menominee, Wisconsin. And it was a master's program, so it was very intense. And I didn't have any time to pleasure read. And I had just read Journey of Souls, and I thought, geez. So even though I was studying marriage and family therapy, in the back of my mind, I was always thinking, gosh, I'd much rather do this past life regression, life between lives. This is what's really meaningful for me. And hey, what could be more powerful and sacred and holy than helping a person connect to their higher soul self? Of course, it was a very intense 2 years, but one of the professors there did past life regression himself, and he and I really connected and really bonded. And in fact, I ended up writing my master's thesis called Exploring the Effectiveness of Past Life Regression. And he showed me where to get training in past life regression. And at the time, there was this organization called IART, International Association for Regression Research and Therapies. A lot of the pioneers in past life regression in America and in Europe had kind of founded this organization back in the late 70s, early 80s, and 90s. And so when I joined that organization in 2000, that's when I started my past life regression training and completed that. And in 2004, was able to do some training with Michael Newton himself. He was there, and he was training some of the newer, some people that he was phasing out of it and was starting to retire. And so he was starting to train some of the early trainers in past life and life between lives work. That's how I initially started on my spiritual path. But I can tell you, Ekomananda, India, I was so enamored with India. I went back 3 different times, or three times altogether, and just travel around the country like a feather in the wind. And I visited a lot of ashrams, and I had all kinds of mystical experiences. I think the first time I went to India in 1990, that's when I learned about meditation. And so I really got into meditation and did a few Vipassana meditation courses. I had never meditated 5 minutes before I never meditated a minute before in my whole life, when I decided to do this 10-day silent retreat where we were meditating 10 hours a day and for 10 days. And it was almost like trial by learning to swim by being thrown into the deep end. But that had a profound impact on me, being able to go within and tap into some powerful divine, the peace beyond all understanding within my own self. Second time I went to India, I learned all about yoga. By happenstance, I just picked a town by random, Pondicherry, and I thought, I'm going to take a train there. And I took a train there, and it came in at about like maybe 6:30 or 7 in the morning. And as soon as I got off the train, I could hear all of these, a band. It was like a parade going by and musical instruments. So I walk over to see what is all this music going on. And there was a band going down the street because it was a parade, and was kicking off the first ever international yoga conference, and for 4 days. And so I had just landed there, the forces combined to have me land there just as this yoga festival was kicking off. So for there, that's how I learned about yoga, and I got into yoga the second time I was in India. The third time I did a lot of ashram hopping and had some mystical experiences. So India has been a very special place for me. It always feels like a home to me every time I go there. And I have had a past life when I did a past life regression once in India. That's a long-winded story of how I got into spirituality.
Well, it's wonderful. Always, I feel the joy when I'm listening to a friend, a peer practitioner share their journey. And India is,
Mhm.
it just feels like a motherland. And I am going there in September, my first time. So that's going to be
Okay.
a very exciting journey. I've heard many stories about India, all kinds.
Hmm.
You name it, being
Yeah.
totally thrown out, um, shake off.
Yes.
All sort of things that I'm so excited
Mhm.
about my trip.
I can say the first time I went to India, I wasn't looking for spiritual experiences. I had gone from teaching English in Taiwan, I went to Nepal. But when I was in Nepal hiking in the Himalayas, I would hear people, travelers, I would meet up with other travelers who had been to India, and everyone was full of India stories. And some of these stories were so absurd and funny and silly. And they would say, you see the most strange things in India. And all the stories reminded me of like my favorite show growing up was called Monty Python's Flying Circus. And it was this British humor show, but it was just absurd humor. And all the stories they're talking about reminded me of that. So it made me feel like I want to go and experience this country. And little did I know that it turned out, yes, it did feel like Monty Python, some of these different things that you would see. But what I wasn't prepared for was how it really opened me up spiritually and helped open up my consciousness. I wasn't expecting that. I wasn't looking for that, but India has a way of doing that. So I envy you going there. I'd love to go there again, and I will someday. But you'll have a great experience there. Yeah, given your spirituality, be ready for some mystical experiences there in India.
I am sure it's going to open me up a little bit even more expanded to a higher consciousness. You visited many ashrams in your third visit. Is there any particular experience in a particular ashram that you have?
Well, I visited many there. When I first, what I can say is I was drawn to go to Bodh Gaya, and Bodh Gaya is where it's famous for the Buddha was sat under the tree there and got enlightenment under the tree. A descendant of that same tree is still there in that same spot because before the tree dies, they'll take a graft of it and bring it grow another tree. So it's essentially like the same tree, a descendant of the same tree that the Buddha sat under. And I remember going to Bodh Gaya, and it was in the early spring. It was in March, and there's Buddhist temples all over that town. But I sat under that tree, thinking, well, I thought in my mind, well, wouldn't it be nice to have a leaf from this same tree that the Buddha sat under that get enlightenment? But of course, it was the springtime. There's no leaves on the ground, and the branches were way too high. You couldn't jump up and get pick a leaf. So, and the leaves were out, but there was no leaves on the ground. But I remember thinking, I just was meditating with my palms up. And I just thought, well, I'll just ask the tree for a leaf. And I asked the tree for a leaf, and I was meditating there and after about 20 minutes, I felt a little something in my hand, and I looked down, and there's a leaf from the tree. And my first thought, of course, was someone put that there. And I look around, and there was no one there at all. And it just dropped in. And so I just thanked the tree. Some of the other ashrams, are you familiar with the book Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda? He was, I read that book and I became very active for 10 years in the Self-Realization Fellowship. That he came to America and founded a lot of meditation centers here. And in the city that I live in, there's a meditation center there. So I was quite active for 10 years. But I went to some of his ashrams. There in India, it's called the YSS, Yagoda Satsanga Society. But there was 3 main ashrams in the north of India that I went to. and visited. Beautiful flowers. But I think one of my favorite ashrams was it was Ramana Maharshi's ashram in Tiruvannamalai.